What I understand you do is work through the large catechism, and today we have the seventh commandment. I did find a copy here when I was here Wednesday, and so I took it home and looked at what he had here. Actually, it's just printed right out of the Book of Concord. As you know, Luther wrote the small catechism when he kind of went around and visited the parishes in his area and found out that people were very ignorant. They did not know the Apostles' Creed, as we just recited a moment ago, or the Lord's Prayer. And they were very ignorant. It just did not know what Scripture taught. And so he composed for them the small catechism, which those of you who worked through that, you got the explanation as well. But the Luther's is just that small part in the front, which we are encouraged to learn by heart and know that. And he was kind of concerned also about the priests and the older people. They didn't know a whole lot either. So he wrote the large catechism for them so they'd know at least a little bit more before the younger kids would. And so Luther himself, stayed in the catechism his whole life. He said, "I'm a doctor of theology, but I'm not too highfalutin or whatever that I ignore the small catechism." So he did that. He stayed in the small catechism his entire life. He said, "I pray that daily." So it's a good model for us as well. So here you've got Pastor Rieger working with you with the commandments. And I understand you read through maybe a paragraph, then ask questions or raise questions and discuss it. Is that true? Something like that? Okay. So I'll take the first part, and then we'll maybe take some turns there. You shall not steal. Next to our own person and our spouse, which has been dealt with, of course, in the sixth commandment, just ahead of that, and our other affairs with our bodies in chapter fifth commandment. Our temporal property is dearest to us. This, too, God wants to have protected. He has forbidden us to rob or pilfer the possessions of our neighbor. For to steal is nothing else than to acquire another's property by unjust means. In a few words, this includes taking advantage of our neighbor in any sort of dealing that results in loss to him. Stealing is a widespread common vice, but people pay so little attention to it that the matter is entirely out of hand. If all who are thieves, though they are unwilling to admit it, were hanged on the gallows, the world would soon be empty. Quite a statement, huh? There would be a shortage of both hangmen and gallows. As I've just said, a person steals not only when he robs a man's strongbox or his pocket, but also when he takes advantage of his neighbor at the market, in a grocery shop, butcher stall, wine and beer cellar, workshop, and in short, where business is transacted and money is exchanged for goods or labor. This is basic definitions right there at the beginning, that taking advantage of someone else. Any thoughts or comments on that? Straightforward. Okay. I did know that we've got this as well, Luther's Large Catechism with study questions. So I did pull together or retype the questions as well, so we might lead that as well. Plus, something else that's really handy is that this is the Pastoral Care Companion, which I'm sure you've all got on your shelf at home. Not. But in the back, it's also got some questions for self-examination. Let me just read those. They're rather brief. But he works through all the commandments. And that's preparation for confession. And in this, he also, let me show you, for instance, with the third commandment, what he does with that. He says, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy." What does this mean? We should fear and love God so we do not despise preaching his word, but hold sacred and gladly hear and learn it. So for all people, do I despise the word by neglect or by paying no attention when it is read or preached? Do I attend the church's worship faithfully, or do I attend sporadically because I prefer to be elsewhere? Do I pray for my pastor and other church workers and support their efforts in service of the word? And there's a special one for pastors. Do I, as a pastor of God's flock, fulfill my calling through diligent preparation and faithful preaching of God's word? I think when we analyze all the commandments, we find that we fall way short, that we love ourselves so much many times that we neglect some of the great things that God would have us be doing on behalf of the kingdom. So for the seventh commandment, he says, "You shall not steal." We should fear and love God so we do not take our neighbor's money or possessions or get them in any dishonest way, but help him to improve and protect his possessions and income. So the question is, do I cheat or otherwise seek to get what I have not earned? Do I take care of what I have, pay what I owe, return what I borrow, and respect other people's property? Do I give generously, or am I selfish, stingy, and greedy with my time and money? Am I unfaithful to the responsibilities of my vocation? And that's actually it. So it covers in in brief detail the questions that Luther raises or that he deals with in this large catechism here in this comments that we'll have as we go along here. When I come across these, every once in a while you hear about a town clerk that has been pilfering funds out of the town treasury. That's happened somewhat recently. I forget the town, if it was Grundy Center or where it was. We had Russ Wassendorf. Anybody know that name? Russell Wassendorf, Sr. He came out of Cedar Falls. He went to Chicago, made his fortune there. He was a financial wizard, and he decided to move his people all to Cedar Falls, build a beautiful building on the northwest side of town out by the golf course, an eco-friendly building and all that, and brought in all these experts in finance and all that. And it turns out what he was doing back in the 1990s, he decided that since he was the owner of this firm, he was the only one that would receive the statements of the bank. He had the statements come from the bank to a personal post office box, so he'd intercept it there. Then he was very good with the computer. He could readjust the figures. So what he was doing, he was taking money from, say, from Bruce Zeebill, for instance, and he'd spend that money elsewhere, and he'd say, you'll get your money in due time. But it was the Ponzi scheme. You know what a Ponzi scheme is? You keep rolling the money over. So he was doing great. He had huge advertisements to you and I. He had a big sign up on the for his firm, PFG Best, I think it was, and was doing great. Just put together a restaurant, an Italian-style restaurant in downtown Cedar Falls, a very expensive, a high-end restaurant for his people, and all that. And it all fell apart a couple years ago. He's now spending time in jail, pretty much for life, I think. He's in federal custody. But I think it was really about, what was it, $200 million that he was showing on his books. He only had about $2 million there. So little violation of that. When we get down to reality, of course, when the rubber meets the road, it deals with each one of us personally. How do we handle our finances? How do we handle our vocations? Currently, I'm in the throes of working on my taxes, and there's always that temptation, well, maybe we'll neglect throwing in this little cash that I earned on the side. I won't pay tax on that, or whatever, some ways to, or maybe I'll throw in a few extra deductions of things I didn't actually do. Make a trip to Hubbard for church business. I just went over to see somebody else, whatever. Any thoughts on that? Any comments? Well, a whole host of things come to play when you think about stealing. The other day there was a robbery. There was shooting actually in Waterloo. When I went to Waterloo, there was a shooting right around the corner from where our church now is. Actually, it was a murder by a dentist. I think killed his wife. So people from here said, "Don't take that call, Pastor. They kill people in Waterloo." So it's always a joy to me, if you want to call it that, when they say something about shootings in Cedar Rapids. Because Cedar Rapids sometimes says, we're better than Waterloo. Cedar Rapids, has Collins radio. They put together the stuff that goes in airplanes and satellites and all that kind of stuff. And for the rockets, for the people that fly, the astronauts, they do all that fancy stuff. What do we have in John Deere? Heavy, hard labor building these huge John Deere tractors. How many of you have seen the John Deere tractor plant by chance? Anybody been through there? You ought to get over there. That's a fantastic experience. And I had been through the engine plant one time with my wife's uncle, who was a farmer. And it's been many years ago. Uncle Carl is now dead. I think it was Carl. But anyway, we go through there. It was the day after shutdown, after they had come back from being done for 3 weeks. You know what they're doing in a plant when they just come back from being shut down? They're not producing that day. They're getting the machines ready to run. So everybody's kind of standing around working with their machines, cleaning up the area and things like that. So Uncle Carl says, no wonder these tractors cost so much. But I finally got through the plant. A couple years ago, I had my son-in-law and my grandchildren from Montrose, Colorado, and we went through the engine plant. That's fantastic. They've got these robots. They have these cylinders bored out, and they've got burrs in them. So they've got two robots. One moves the block around, and the other one comes down and deburrs the cylinders. They've also got a line that they go through. And they said, I think the Dodge, what's the top of the line? That's Hot Rod. The Hemi engine, but the sports car, top of the line sports car. Can't think of it right now. What's one? The Viper, yeah, the Viper. The Viper and a couple other automobile engines get the kind of treatment in terms of how the engine is built. The John Deere tractors get that all the time. So you're getting a fantastic product there, just amazing. And then we've gone through the Tractor Works a number of years, ever since we've been there. They were downtown, now they're out the northwest side and our northeast side, and to see the changes in even the manufacturing of the tractors these days. When we were first there were people that had to manually lift some things. Now everything is, I don't think it's over 5 pounds that you lift. Everything's hydraulic lifts and things like that. Anyway, quite a fantastic experience. Anybody go through, I think the Pennies did, I think they went through where you have the gold key tractor or something like that. You follow your tractor through the production line. Anybody from here do that? But anyway, you can do that. You can order your tractor, then you go through and watch your tractor, and then you're the one who drives it off the line. Fantastic. I diverge. I digress. I do it often. So some of the questions that comes out of this too, with the aim of protecting people's property, what is God forbidden in this commandment? Oh, we talked about some of those things here. Huh? How is stealing here defined? Make a list of various ways of acquiring the property of others by unjust means, such as are used by criminals, by shopkeepers, by servicemen, by clerks, by businessmen, by employees, by mechanics, by workmen, by the decent citizens who operate as, in this one, I think it's office chairs, but in this one here, I think this version, it was swivel chair swindlers. Common statement that thievery is the most common craft and the largest trade union on earth. What he's saying there, of course, is that to some extent, we all do some cheating one way or the other. It may be that we're goofing off on the job. Of course, a self-employed farmer, I'm not sure how you handle that in terms of how am I cheating things, unless you're goofing off enough, you're cheating your family out of some just income and things like that. Any comments or anything like that? Any reactions? All right. He does say, when you think about that comment where he says, if all who are thieves, though they are unwilling to admit it, were hanged on the gallows, the world would soon be empty and there would be a shortage of both hangman and gallows. Who has not ever done any cheating or anything like that? Anybody raising their hands and saying they're perfect? I don't think so. Okay, somebody want to take paragraph 225? Somebody care to read that for us? Otherwise, you got to listen to me read it. Okay, thank you. Of course, Luther's day is a little bit different than ours, but human nature has not changed at all. And so you still have cheating in just at different forms. And today you've got stores, well, Target. You know all about Target, where people's basic information was stolen because they used credit cards at Target, and it's been a huge thing. And so they've had to enhance the security. We've got kids going to College Hill right now, where my son is a pastor, who are in computer science and things like that. One will be doing an internship with McGladrey. Do you know McGladrey is an accounting firm? They've got a security section there, and evidently they do a lot of security for banks. Of course, that's a huge security risk if you've got a bank that's vulnerable. And so that's a huge employment, on the one hand, opportunity, but a huge cost in terms of doing business these days in terms of protecting vital information, protecting accounts and all of that. When he talks here about the, let's see, what was the thing that kind of, cheating his employer, or the 30 or 40 golden, I'm not sure, I didn't check out what a golden was in Luther's day, but I've heard it said also that a retail store, say a Target or a Walmart or anybody, adjusts their books to allow for about a 10% loss because of either bad debts or stolen property. And people were walking out of the stores. Sometimes they catch them. One time, Ruby and I were walking into the penny store and saw a young man dashing out after a couple ladies. Well, maybe they were women, maybe they weren't ladies even, because they had taken something. And he had gotten wind of it. Their cameras had caught it. He was probably sitting back in his office and was kind of monitoring the checkouts and things like that, and saw in the doors and saw people leaving. So he was chasing them on foot. I think he did get there. I haven't seen it, so I was trying to grab the license number as well. I think he eventually got that phone in the police. But every once in a while, I see a police car outside Walmart or outside Penny's, whatever, as well in Waterloo, where evidently something is going on like that. Any further comments regarding that? Doesn't happen in Hubbard, I'm sure, right? You don't have Walmart here at Target or 226. Somebody want to take care of that chunk of change there? Chunk of paragraph. Otherwise, the same must be said of artisans, workmen, and day laborers who act high-handedly and never know enough ways to overcharge people and yet are careless and unreliable in their work. All these are far worse than sneak thieves against whom we can guard with lock and bolt. Or if we catch them, we can deal with them so that they will not repeat the offense. But against the others, no one can guard. No one even dares to give them a hard look or accuse them of theft. One would 10 times rather lose the money from one's purse, for these are my neighbors, my good friends, my own servants, from whom I expect good. But they are the first to defraud me. Furthermore, at the market and everyday business, the same fraud prevails in full force. One person openly cheats another with defective merchandise, false measures, dishonest weights, and bad coins, and takes advantage of him by underhanded tricks and sharp practices and crafty dealing. Or again, one swindles another in a trade and deliberately fleeces, skins, and torments him. Who can even describe or imagine it all? In short, thievery is the most common craft and largest guild on earth. If we look at mankind and all its conditions, it is nothing but a vast, wide stable full of great thieves. Luther is quite blunt, isn't he? In there, in terms of overcharging people, when we have an opportunity to take advantage of some people, we tend to do that. People who are contractors can look at that and say, well, I think I can make a little bit more here. But towns and publicly held things typically are required to have 3 bids come in, so you can kind of hold the competition to the fire and their feet to the fire somewhat. Any comments on that? Thoughts? We have, good. We're good yet. These men are called gentlemen swindlers. I told you about Russ Wassendorf a little bit ago. Or big operators. Far from being picklocks and sneak thieves who loot a cash box, they sit in office chairs and are called great lords and honorable good citizens. Yet with a great show of legality, they rob and steal. Incidentally, Russ Wassendorf wouldn't be able to do that today. Banks have caught wind of this kind of thievery, and they've increased the security on that as well. But he was able to take the documents and do his word processing and so forth, and he was able to change the figures, go into that, copy it, scan it, and then change all the figures so it looked like he had lots of money in the bank yet, so he could impress those who were about ready to invest some more money in the firm. I see where also his wife, I'm not sure if probably his first wife, Connie, and I think the state is getting about, or whoever it is, the federal government, I guess, getting about $3+ million from her, which will help out to those who have lost countless millions of dollars. That came through the news this last week. These men are called gentlemen. Great show of legality, they rob and steal. Yes, we might well keep quiet here about various petty thieves in order to launch an attack against the great, powerful arch-thieves who consort with lords, princes, and daily plunder not only a city or two, but all Germany. Indeed, what would become of the head and chief protector of all thieves, the Holy See of Rome, and all its retinue, which there Luther has in mind, no doubt, the indulgences, how they were selling souls, for the sake of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome and all of that. So no doubt he's got that in mind as he's writing this, which has plundered and stolen the treasures of the whole world and holds them to this day. This, in short, is the way of the world. Those who can steal and rob openly are safe and free, unmolested by anyone, even claiming honor from men. Meanwhile, the little sneak thieves who have committed one offense must bear disgrace and punishment so as to make the others look respectable and honorable. The latter should be told that in the eyes of God, they're the greatest thieves and that he will punish them as they deserve. So what Luther had written so far, one could maybe excuse himself and say, well, look at all those people, but he's coming here to the heart of the matter that we all fall short of the kingdom of God in terms of what God wants us to be doing. And, of course, the solution is to know that we are sinners, then to look to the cross of Jesus. By the way, there was an article in the Eldora paper some years ago that pointed out the artistry and the artistic ability of previous pastors. This was from the turn of the century, I think, going to the 20th century when that pastor painted that. And, of course, Pastor Clevey and Pastor Rieger are great guys at artistic stuff. Notably, I told Pastor Rieger, I said, notably absent in that article is me. My wife has some art. He said, well, your talents lie elsewhere. I'm still trying to discover them, whatever. Oh, well, so this commandment is very far-reaching, as we've shown. It's necessary, therefore, to emphasize and explain to the common people in order that they may be restrained in their wantonness. The wrath of God may be continually urgently kept before their eyes. We must preach this not to Christians, but chiefly to knaves and scoundrels, though it might be more fitting the judge, the jailer, or the hangman did the preaching. In other words, the law, the cop, and so forth. Let everyone know, then, that it is his duty, at the risk of God's displeasure, not to harm his neighbor, take advantage of him, defraud him by any faithless or underhanded business transaction. More than that, he is under obligation faithfully to protect his neighbor's property and further his interests, especially when he takes remuneration for such services. Any thoughts or reactions to that statement there? Moving along. A person who willfully disregards this commandment may indeed get by and escape the hangman, but he will not escape God's wrath and punishment. So God sees all things, so we may think we're getting by. And good news is, I hear the IRS is somewhat undermanned, so unless you really have a gross mistake or gross misstatement of your income or something like that on your tax form, you probably won't be audited. Anybody use TurboTax here? I use TurboTax, and I love to see that figure up there when it turns green from red to green. and another deduction. Another couple bucks I'm saving, But TurboTax will also warn you if you give you a red flag if there's something in there that might trigger an audit. So I think it's kind of a great program. Let's see, what was I at? This person will indeed get by and escape. Though he pursues his defiant and arrogant course for a long time, still he will remain a tramp and a beggar and will suffer all kinds of troubles and misfortunes. Now, you servants ought to take care of your masters or mistresses. Here you have to deal with employees, of course, right? Which enables you to stuff your craw, your belly, but you go your own way, take your wages like a thief, and even expect to be revered like noblemen. Maybe you're even insolent toward masters and mistresses, unwilling to do them the favor and service of protecting them from loss. But see what you gain when you come into property yourself and have a house of your own, which God will let you acquire to your undoing. There will become a day of reckoning and retribution for every penny you have taken, for every penny's damage you have done. You will have to pay back 30-fold. We probably say, well, that's not really going to happen that way. But if you think about all of life, you cheat. Many times there are other people that are going to cheat you. And that's the way the world is with sinful human beings. But we have the Son of God who comes and forgives us our sins and moves us forward by His Spirit into a life of sanctification, holy living. 237, so will be with artisans and day laborers from whom we are obliged to suffer such intolerable insolence. Every once in a while there's an article, for instance, about auto mechanics. I have to be very careful that they may want to remove some parts or change some parts that really don't need to be removed and changed. Something else will flow through my mind. But you see those things all the time come along, that there are ways in which they are trying to take advantage of us. Just let them keep on boldly fleecing people as long as they can. God will not forget His commandment. He will pay them what they deserve. He will hang them not on a green gallows, but on a dry one. Green gallows, of course, will kind of give. The dry one stands firm. They will neither prosper nor gain anything their whole life long. Of course, if our government were well regulated, such insolence might soon be checked. Here's talking about German government, of course, of his day, but you might say the same thing today. The ancient Romans, for example, promptly took such offenders by the scruff of the neck, so others took warning. Is it Sweden? It's one of those Scandinavian countries, I guess, that's very stiff with drunk driving laws. So people, if they even sniffed alcohol, they don't think of driving, evidently. It's just such a stiff penalty. And we just had another young man that was found guilty, maybe even confessed it, but he had taken the life of somebody else by drunk driving. He was very remorseful. The KWWL, the local station, was showing that, where he had deprived this person of their life and, of course, their means of living down the line and all those sorts of things. But if those things were much tougher, and we had some incidents around Hudson. I think the Hudson high school kids went down to the State House and that tried to get some of the laws stricter. Right now, it was 1.0 at one point, right? Now it's 0.8 or 0.08, excuse me. And they'd like to get it down to 0.04 or something like that in some localities. is 0.04 CDL. There's a man who knows, right? All right. You know, my son-in-law drives a truck, and his blood pressure was a little high, and so he had to have it temporary until he got that taken care of. Pretty strict. My wife says, now that I'm 75, I shouldn't even be on the road. So, by the way, she came with me on Wednesday night. She wanted to come today, but we went to an event for Valley Lutheran School last night, and she had a sore throat then. She woke up this morning. She said, I don't think I better go with you. So she stayed put, but sends her greetings. So that's what day laborers. Let's see. The same fate will overtake those who turn the free market into a carrion pit and a robber's den. Daily the poor are defrauded. New burdens, high prices are imposed. Everyone misuses the market in his own willful, conceited, and arrogant way. As if it were his right and privilege to sell his goods as dearly as he pleases without a word of criticism. We shall stand by and let such persons fleece, grab, and hoard. We shall trust God, who takes matters into his own hands. After they have scrimped and scraped for a long time, he will pronounce this kind of blessing over them. Your gain will spoil in the garner, your beer in the cellar, your cattle will die in the stall. Yes, where you have cheated and defrauded anyone out of a golden, your entire hoard will be consumed by rust, so you will never enjoy it. Wow. Any comments or thoughts or any reactions? Got time? Indeed, we have the evidence before our very eyes every day that no stolen or ill-gotten possession thrives. It seems that way at times. I think it's Psalm 73 says, look at the beautiful-bodied people of this world, and they seem to thrive, and they seem to, by cheating and whatever else. And basically the psalmist goes on and says, don't worry, their time will come. God will set things straight. How many people scratch? Is that where we're at? Yeah. How many people scrape and scratch day and night and yet grow not a penny richer? Though they gather a great hoard, they must suffer so many troubles and misfortunes that they can never enjoy it or pass it on to their children. Because we ignore this and act as if it were none of our business, God must punish us and teach us morals in a different way. Lays on us one affliction after another, or he quarters a troop of soldiers upon us. In 1 hour they clean out our chests and purses down to the last penny. Then by way of thanks they burn and ravage house and home, outrage and kill wife and children. Now, we've not experienced that, thankfully, in the United States as they have in other people. You had the Civil War, you had fighting on our own land, but otherwise we've been able to escape that. Europe, some of these countries, Ukraine, had armies tromping through one way and then the other one. Of course, that's much in the news right now. We've got a great doctor in Waterloo who's been treating my wife for kidney issues, and she's from Romania. I made some commentary where I said about all that going. She says, it's always going on over there. That's the way of life over there with fighting and wars and rumors of wars on their own homeland. Let's see. In short, however, 245, I think that's where we're at. In short, however much you steal, depend on it that just as much will be stolen from you. Anyone who robs, takes things by violence and dishonesty must put up with another who plays the same game. For God is a master of this art. Since everyone robs and steals from the other, he punishes one thief by means of another. Otherwise, where would we find enough gallows and ropes? So sometimes he allows this happens that the judgment takes place throughout life, even though the police may not be involved. Whoever is willing to learn a lesson, let him know that this is God's commandment and must not be treated as a joke. Shall put up with those of you who despise, defraud, steal, and rob us. We shall endure your arrogance and show forgiveness and mercy, as the Lord's Prayer teaches. The upright, meanwhile, will not want. You will hurt yourself more than others. Beware how you deal with the poor, of whom there are many now. If when you meet a poor man who must live from hand to mouth, you act as if everyone must live by your favor. You skin and scrape him down to the bone, you arrogantly turn him away, whom you ought to give aid, he will go away wretched and dejected, because he can complain to no one else who cry to heaven. Beware of this, I repeat, of the devil himself. Such a man's sighs and cries will be no joking matter. They will have an effect too heavy for you and all the world to bear, for they will reach God, who watches over poor, sorrowful hearts, and he will not leave them unavenged. If you despise and defy this, see whom you have brought upon yourself. If you succeed and prosper, for all the world you may call God and me liars. So as you think about all these things, the reality also is that, in the small catechism, Luther warns us about the things that we shouldn't do, but also tells us the things that we should do to help those in need, help and protect their property and business and all those sorts of things. We've got a great thing going in our synod that we had it going on for many years, but when Matt Harrison got involved, he was a pastor. I met him as a young pastor. He was at Westgate, Iowa first, and then went to the a large parish, an inner city parish in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And he and the local priests did what, and their parishes did what the city could not do. They could revitalize an inner city of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Very devastated. They got to writing some grants and things like that between, again, the Catholic parish and the Lutheran parish. They got some inner city rebuilding going on there. That propelled him to the offices in St. Louis, where he was in charge of human care and did a great job there. And that propelled him then in the office which he now holds as president of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. But if you look at the website and look at Mercy, and you know the slogan of the Synod right now is this. It's on my pin. Mercy, witness, and life together. Martyria, which is witness. Diaconia, which is the service, servant events and things like that. And then koinonia, which is fellowship or life together. And the things that we've done as a synod in terms of helping people out, Japan when the tsunami hit, and all that, when the earthquake hit in Haiti, we sent aid down there. In fact, my own doctor and I went to Jamaica back in 1993. He had gone 3 years prior to that, so I went along with him as a dental assistant, kind of, but I was actually in charge of some spiritual stuff. But then he went back, or I showed him that Haiti was going to have this servant event coming up. That was in January a couple years ago. And I saw it come through my email, but I hadn't opened it. Then the earthquake hit Haiti. And so I opened up and found out this was coming up in March, so I told him about it. So I wound up taking him down to the airport early in the morning. I think at 2 o'clock we headed out to the Des Moines airport. He went there, and he said it was a lot rougher there doing the work that they did. They were sleeping on a hard concrete floor in this building and having to put some kind of netting over themselves to keep the bugs out. He said they still got in, but he was back in Jamaica again this year for a brief bit as well, for a 2-week stint. But those kinds of servant events are great, and our synod, we can be happy we're able to do that. We're identifying the tornadoes that have devastated the U.S. and Midwest and so forth, and the East Coast. Well, Oklahoma a couple years ago, the floods in Colorado this last year, 2 years ago, whatever it was, but we've been on the scene with those things. So any comments about that? And locally, of course, you've got food banks, charitable ways in which we help people individually and through organizations, such as whether the city may have or whatever the church may have. We have now, 248, we have now given sufficient warning and exhortation. He who will not heed or believe this may go his own way until he learns it by experience. It needs to be impressed upon the young people so that they may be on their guard and not follow the old wayward crowd, but may keep their eyes fixed upon God's commandment. Words, kids, don't follow me, but the old crowd. To restrain open lawlessness is the responsibility of princes and magistrates, in other words, the government. They should be alert and resolute enough to establish and maintain order in all areas of trade and commerce in order that the poor may not be burdened, oppressed, in order that they may not themselves be charged with other men's sins. Enough has been said concerning the nature of stealing. It is not to be confined to narrow limits, but must extend to all our relations with our neighbors. To sum up, as we've done in the previous commandments, on the one hand, we are forbidden to do our neighbor any injury or wrong, in any way unimaginable, whether by damaging, withholding, or interfering with his possessions or property. We're not even to consent to or permit such a thing, but rather to avert and prevent it. On the other hand, we are commanded to promote and further our neighbor's interests. When he suffers want, we are to help, share, and lend to both friends and foes. When we were in the Philippines, we would have people that would be professional beggars. They would have their hands out, and they'd have a friend there who supposedly was blind. There was a big question whether they were or not. And they, tagi cinco, give me five centavos. And in Waterloo, we've got many times people out by crossroads, say homeless or need food or something like that. And you find out later on that they are just taking advantage of people. So you have to be very careful in that. You find the people are justly needful, and we've sometimes can ferret that out. I can tell you some stories. I won't get into all those details, but some stories about people who came to Faith Lutheran in Waterloo and needed some gas because he needed to get down to Iowa City to see somebody who was in the hospital. It turns out they didn't have anybody down there, but they figure a pastor's got a soft heart. He's going to help them out, and so we're taking advantage sometimes that way. We had a guy from the Blackhawk County Board of Relief, or Blackhawk County, whatever it is. He came and talked to us at the pastor's conference one time. He said, funnel them through us. We've got the ways of checking this out, knowing who's really in need and who's not. Even then, they can still be surprised, I guess, but nonetheless. Anyone who seeks and desires good works will here find ample opportunity to do things which are heartily acceptable and pleasing to God. Moreover, he graciously lavishes upon them a wonderful blessing. We shall be richly rewarded for all the kind help and kindness we show to our neighbors. King Solomon teaches in Proverbs 19. He who is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, he will repay him for his deed. Here you have a rich Lord. Surely he is sufficient for your needs and will let you lack or want for nothing. Thus, with a happy conscience, you can enjoy 100 times more than you could scrape together by perfidy and injustice. Whoever does not desire this blessing will find wrath and misfortune enough. I didn't check out perfidy. Do you know, can somebody describe for me what perfidy is? A good definition of that? Anybody got their iPhone handy? Yeah. All right, any other further comments or thoughts? Let's see, that clock says 5 till 8. Well, we can go for a while yet. But this says it's about 9:46. Anything else? How do you close? Lord's Prayer, benediction? Lord's Prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right, thanks, everybody. Good to be with you.